Abu Salahuddin, how's the day going? How's Friday?
Alhamdulillah, good, mashallah. Just not that long got back from the gym, so just relaxing and looking forward to another interesting discussion tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I hope Angela will also join so we can just discuss with her. I did message her, and she might have been busy when I sent her the message, so I didn't hear anything back yet.
Okay, no
Sure,
problem.
the space link as well.
Yeah, let me send it to her actually.
Yeah, do we have? So what are we going to get into today? Anything we're discussing specifically? Is it going to be more of a Q&A today? Well, I'm not sure if Rafaq have something in his mind, but it's more what we know that like Q&As, and so we can say from our perspective about people's experiences or from Islamic perspective, or answer questions they might have about it. And I believe like also we need to inform people if any one of us, like we have some people who was not Muslims, to know that some of us was not Muslim and then converted or reverted to Muslim based on just to feel aligned on backgrounds, like just we are open to anyone, and Islam is open to anyone to hear and to think. That's also a good point for people to understand. Yeah, man, absolutely, bro. It's I think that's what these spaces is about, just to get different perspectives and have those discussions. It's very important. Oh, sorry, over to you, Fuck. You were saying something, man.
No, I was just saying I do agree with Sam, because I think having maybe this one could be more like an open discussion with others, because I just feel like I also want to understand what type of experiences people are having. Like, for example, last week when we spoke to Angeli, like I got a completely different perspective, learned about the council because I've only read about it, but didn't know there was someone that we kind of interacted with who is communicating with the council. So it's nice to know those things, and that way I think it's just better for us for our own research, understanding how these things are working, what they are, and how we can maybe potentially discuss about it. So
yeah, we've got someone's hand up, I think. Oh gosh, maybe we can go over to him and then make a start.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Hey guys, assalamu alaikum. I'm excited for this conversation. I've followed some of you guys' work. It's excellent and very necessary for this time. Look at the post I put up in the Nest. Nikola Tesla, one of the great luminaries, said that the day we shall know exactly what electricity is will chronicle an event probably greater and more important than any other recorded in human history. Now, as Muslims, we probably don't agree with that, because I think there are probably greater events in history that have happened, that were in the history of our blessed prophets and such. But at any rate, an interesting kind of reflection before I kind of hopped in this space. You guys talk about UFO X and everything, right? And I feel kind of a little bit of trepidation about hopping up into a space with other fellow Muslims to discuss some of my own experiences and kind of thoughts. Whereas on UFO X, there's a bit more freedom, because you can just say things and people will, at worst, dismiss you as being crazy. But at best, there's an open-mindedness. It's interesting when religion and dogma comes up into question, right? Suddenly, ideas are more than just ideas. They're points of conflict potentially, right? And in the Islamic world, among our scholarship, as much as I revere our traditions, sometimes there's a little bit of reluctance to consider new kind of perspectives and such. And at any rate, I just want to kind of preface, in Surah Baqarah, where it speaks of how Allah taught Adam alayhi salam the names of all things. I think that those series of verses are extremely important, because if you recall, what it's describing is that when Adam is created and designated as a vicegerent for the earth, the angels say, you're going to put something on the earth that's going to shed blood and sow treachery when we just praise your glory. And then Allah says that, I know that which you do not know. And it says he taught him the names of all things. But that word, names, it's so much more than just a name. In European folklore and other kind of mythological perspectives, there's this concept of the true name of a thing, which suggests that if you know the true name of a thing, you have a degree of control or power over it. So we could say that name is not just, the label we refer to something as, but the innate inner reality of a thing, batin and zahir, the innate inner disposition and reality of a thing. And so I'll land it here, but I look forward to this conversation. And just one last point to that end, we're approaching a place where quantum mechanics and a lot of other things are really coming to a head. And Richard Feynman, who's one of the fathers of quantum physics, he has this little anecdote with his father where when they were speaking of birds, his father was like, you look at a bird and we call it this in English, they call it that in Japanese. But to know the true name of a bird, you have to look at what that bird actually is, as opposed to our human kind of labels. So the language of the birds is also a fascinating thing. And, in the Quran, it speaks of how Dawood and Sulaiman alayhi salam were given the language of the birds, the speech of the birds, right? And what could that possibly mean? I'll end it there, but I look forward to this conversation, guys. It's very important. And thank you for doing what you guys do and holding space for this perspective.
Oh, thank you for coming on, man. Yeah, to be honest, bro, this is quite open. It's a very open space. I think that's the objective behind the X spaces that we do, is just to get everyone's perspective. It's an open discussion. Yeah, we put an Islamic perspective forward at times and approach things from an Islamic lens, but yeah, we do speculate at times. We bring in different perspectives. So yeah, even that verse is a very interesting one. And just a quick comment on that before we go to Sam. Like you mentioned, it could also refer to the essence of things. The true essence or nature of a thing. I think Plato in his works also mentions or talks a lot about the essence or the true nature of things. So the knife, the essence of a knife is that it cuts, and so on and so forth. So teaching Adam the names of all things, I think it is also understood broadly. If you look at all the tafsir and the exegetical literature on it, there's a lot that's behind that. It's the essence of a thing, it's the nature of a thing, it's a true understanding of a thing, and that's knowledge. And I think that's one of the things that Adam and his progeny were given, which in some respects set them apart as well, which is this awareness and knowledge and the intellect. And then the test in this life is the exercise of engaging that in the right way and trying to be successful in ensuring that you're doing what's right, what's upright, what's moral and ethical, etc. So it's a very powerful area of discussion in and of itself. But let's go over to Sam. He's got his hand up.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, thank you so much. I was going to mention the same point you said about the essence of things, but also wanted to bring up a speculation or a theory that some people would assume based on the words used. So when God teaches Adam the names of all things, or it says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. So he taught Adam all the names in totality. So people assume that this is the names of all things, which includes the collective knowledge that the humans will learn over time, including science, magic, or like everything. So it seems that Adam contained the knowledge of all humanity. However, some people also think that, from some sort of philosophical perspective, some people think that angels already, with their question and this semi-challenge happened, that angels are almost like archetypes of all the good things in the world, because some angels could be managing or have a responsibility, let's say, for wind, for movements of the celestial bodies. And then later on, he told Adam, أخبرهم بأسمائهم. So tell him their names. So someone was saying a theory that it contained the names of the angels, and there is a high chance that the angels didn't know their own names because they told God, we know only what you teach us, and we do not know otherwise. So he told them, أخبرهم بأسمائهم. tell him their names, and it was said in a way that mentions something which is conscious, like an entity. Tell them their names. And then when he responded, then God told him, didn't I tell you that I have the knowledge of everything, and I know what you conceal and what you show up? Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Akash's comment. Thank you.
A brilliant point, bro. And I think it's a nice segue as well to the sort of general topics we're going to be talking about today, which is immediately after that, God tells, the angels and Iblis, who was amongst the angels, to prostrate to Adam out of respect. So that was quite a significant event of, the learning of the names and then sharing of the names. And then,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. When you mentioned about bowing to Adam, I just came to this conclusion recently that the Bible and the Jewish Torah doesn't have the story about the angels bowing to Adam and Satan rejecting this. However, it was found later on in what people think it's a pseudo-apocryphal paperwork called the Apocalypse of Moses, that says that the story of Adam and Eve from their own perspective when they're telling their grandkids. And surprisingly, it mentions an encounter with Satan where Satan was told to bow down and he refused. And I was surprised because this manuscript was found later on. However, it's written before the revelation of the Quran, and no one knew this story until later on.
It's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, the source, we believe, the ultimate source behind all revelation to all prophets has always been the same. It's the creator of the heavens and the earth. And so it's no surprise that, these similarities emerge through history, even though it may emerge in the form of a lost document that's later discovered. So it's very interesting. And Iblis obviously then rejects this character, Iblis, this, and to be nuanced, there have been different opinions in regards to Iblis in our history. But the dominant opinion, I think the most sound opinion, which is acknowledged by most modern or contemporary scholars as well, is that Iblis was a jinn. And I think there's ample evidence for that. And he rejects it. And his reason for rejecting to show this prostration to Adam is, I am made of fire, he is made of clay. And I think that testimony itself of him, that he is made of fire, it's almost he himself puts himself into the category of the creation of jinn, not the angels, because the angels are comprised of light. So it's and that's a very pivotal moment if you think about it, because it sets the stage for that battle between humanity and the jinn kind, or the evil of shayateen amongst the jinn.
True. And I personally 100% agree. And what Sam was saying earlier, I did come across like few articles where they were discussing similarity between like the story of Adam found in the Quran and some early like biblical scriptures. They have similar tone to what I know it's talking about Lucifer, but it didn't refer to Lucifer as a fallen angel, but like a different being on its own. And how he rejected, prostrating to Adam or bowing down to Adam. But for all those people who just joined in, so we're trying to have a basic discussion about UFO and the jinn, and we also want to hear from you guys, your experiences. I know some of you guys down here are, have taken part in remote viewing and are speaking to these phenomena. So we would love to hear. Just raise your hand or request, and we'll pull you guys up. But in the meantime, we'll continue on with this discussion. So yeah,
on the point you guys are making about the Iblis's kind of defiance, one thing, the batin zahir, inner reality, outer reality thing is important. In this reality, it says that Allah, God, is the knower of the unseen, the all-knower. And various people and other entities have degrees of knowledge on the unseen, but it always goes deeper. And, to that end, things exist in layers, right? Subtlety, al-Latif, the gentle one. Subtlety is... So when we talk about the names of all things, think about the divine attributes, right? The divine names. It's not just like when we think of Al-Aziz, when we think about power and might, right? It's not just, wouldn't you say that aluminum is mighty, has the attribute of mightiness? Or also rigid masculinity or femininity. It has mighty qualities to it, right? So these things exist in layers. And one thing that's interesting is I think the metaphysical and the physical do converge at a point. If you look throughout history, there's a tendency for not just a God in the theological sense, but also in the historical sense. The lowest get elevated to the highest if they stick to the principles that are more aligned with truth. You see that in the story of, Moses, peace be upon him. I mean, look at history, right? You have, the Babylonians are oppressing the Persians. Persians conquer the Babylonians. The Persians become decadent and oppressive. They get conquered by the Greeks. And then the Romans get conquered by the Arabs. And the Arabs themselves get decadent and stray and get conquered by the Turks. And then, the Turks get conquered by X, Y, Z. And then it kind of progresses. So in that kind of sense, yeah, I think the jinn are very real and they're very mighty, but at the same time, can you see that kind of dynamic of like, oh, this little earthen creature, how could that be greater? I'm made of fire, you're made from clay. But that idea that God knows what you do not know. And so this idea that there's latent potential within the human that is hidden, but vast, right? And I'll just land on this point that among those divine attributes, right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We say ar-Rahman is the very first name, the most merciful, the most compassionate. God does tend to have a kind of special place for the weak and the downtrodden and those worthy of compassion and mercy. So you see that kind of nature of the weak being, as it says in the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth, right? What are the meek really? I think there's a poverty of spirit, like in the Sufi tradition. It's about, it's not just being poor, but a poverty of spirit, meaning you are not self-sufficient, so you're always seeking. So I think that's there's even layers to that idea, right, of the defiance of the jinn and the kind of supremacy of mankind when we're aligned.
Yeah, some interesting points, man. Absolutely, and I think arrogance is something that comes front and center in that those narrations. The arrogance blinds Iblis from seeing even the display that Adam has been, it presents of naming all these things and etc. He overlooks not only the hidden but also what's apparent. He can't see it. He's blinded to it because of his arrogance. And I think there's another interesting point, and maybe I can get Abu Salahuddin's take on this. That the angels mention corruption and bloodshed. Are you going to create a being? Some of the scholars mention this is possibly due to them witnessing what the jinn had been engaged in on the earth, because we believe that they have been around far longer than us. They were created before humans, and they occupy the earth longer than us as well. And there seems to be the idea of these wars. And Abu Salahuddin, you mentioned that there's a cold war potentially going on amongst the jinn. So the idea is seeded there right in the beginning, that there's corruption and bloodshed potentially that was taking place amongst the jinn. So yeah, any thoughts on that? Well,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first kind of evidence we do have of like some, I would say, recent ongoing conflict going on between, we would say, the believing jinn, the Muslim jinn, and the non-Muslim jinn that are essentially represented by Lucifer and his sort of followers, is a very famous story of one of the Sahabas, one of the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that was kidnapped and was held for some time until he was then rescued by a group of Muslim jinn who were fighting against these non-Muslim jinn. They rescued him and assisted him to return back to Medina. So this is kind of like, if this was happening over 1400 years ago, then we have to look at, perhaps with the rapid expansion of Islam amongst the jinn kind, this would inevitability, led to some kind of conflict going on between, those jinn who were Muslim and those jinn who are not Muslim. And really, we see that reflection in the human world. We see the opposition to Muslims, whether that is in recent history, that would be kind of represented by colonialism. We go back further in history, that we would know that would be represented by the Crusades, these wars against Islam. So yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we see it, and this is something that is in the Quran that talks about how groups of men or mankind and the shayateen. Essentially, they gather, they help and support each other. The shayateen, of the jinn misguiding humans, but in their misguidance and their animosity towards Islam, they become shayateen in a way. So if we see, that this is happening and is contained within the Quran, then potentially what we're looking at is maybe because of the way that Iblis sees humanity. And I think this is very, very important. We have to understand. Although we as humans look at each other very, very differently, i.e. political structures and so forth, and I'm talking about that because it's very sort of like the aspect of today's day and age with political difference, whether that is between liberalism, communism, capitalism, and so forth, then Iblis, in his hatred of humanity, would be more than willing, essentially, to play different groups of humanity against each other by pretending to be perhaps different entities from supposedly beyond our own solar system, providing them with weaponry, technology to gain an advantage over each other. And like I say, we, as I mentioned in the podcast that I did with yourself, Brother Imran, we see that happened in the Vietnam War with the Russians and the Americans supporting the North Vietnamese and the Southern Vietnamese. But like I say, bringing it back to the Quran clearly does mention that there are groups of humanity that essentially makes bargains, agreements with the jinn to help and support each other and ends up being misguided by them.
And to that point, actually, I do want to kind of like probably segue into this. I've seen quite a few posts recently with remote viewing and stuff. And of course, we have our own position on this, right? We know like what these are. But for a lot of people, they're just having this difficulty with just understanding what these, they think these are, so how would I say this? Like good spirits or good, like these phenomena are good, they don't mean as any harm. So, and there might be some people within this who are listening and who have experience with remote viewing. But my thing is like, how would they generally go about knowing what is like if they're good or bad, right? Because we have our own explanation. We can understand like by verses, reciting the verses from like the scriptures and stuff. But what about like an average person? What do you think? That was
Yeah, absolutely. I think this, the Quran does talk about the deceptive nature of the misguided jinn. So they will essentially come to you as very benevolent, kind, caring. We hear many contactee stories. Chris Bledsoe is a very good example of, that these entities come in because, they see the position that humanity's in. They want to uplift humanity to, a higher spiritual state, but it will come with costs to it. We know that Chris Bledsoe has openly said, that these entities that he interconnects with essentially have said to him, do as we tell you, and that will protect your family. So in other words, if you don't do what we tell you, we're going to harm your family. Well, a benevolent entity would not behave in such a manner. As for the remote viewing, I think from an Islamic perspective, and I can only come from an Islamic perspective, this is something that can be very, very problematic because essentially you are opening yourself up to the potentiality of where you can or could be essentially possessed in a physical sense by one of these entities, which they can do. I've interacted with people that are possessed by these shayateen jinn, and the remote viewing as well. The question is it actually taking place, or rather, is it an illusion that the shayateen is utilizing to manipulate you, essentially to further believe in them or to be a sense to be guided towards them so they can utilize that to misguide you as an individual. So the remote viewing, like I say, for me, is very problematic. It's very dangerous. I believe that remote viewing potentially is opening you up to be physically possessed by one of these entities.
It does really good. I do want to go to Sam real quick, but before that, actually, you'll often see this where people are reporting hitchhiker effect, right? That's very common when it comes to remote viewing or even contacting these phenomena.
Yeah,
but you want to go ahead and then
Akash,
go to Sam.
I think Akasha has his hand up, is pressed, so maybe we can go to him and then.
It's okay. It's okay. I can be patient. Sam, you can go ahead if you want, bro.
I just wanted to comment about the remote viewing point that what Abu Salah mentioned, that it could be an illusion sent by the jinn, which is that explains the some failures of remote viewings that people supposed to see or locate something and it's wrong. At the same time, when it's successful, so I believe how remote viewings work is actually the jinn is the one going to the place, especially that they have high speed, and then telepathically they send you the vision that they can see in the place that they want them to go, and then they send it to your brain, and then gets translated inside. Unless if it's got with the wrong information, then there could be the delusions and manipulation that's happening.
Yes, interesting.
Sorry, I was just going to add into that. It's very interesting that Ibn Taymiyyah, in his very famous book on the essay on the jinn, does mention in there that he said that this is one of the abilities that the jinn do have, is to essentially manipulate you into seeing false imagery. And these things are then done to, like we say, to misguide. You then take... you begin to build up your confidence and your trust in these entities. And as the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, that they will give you one truth to 99 lies.
So, I want to say this with all due respect, and obviously I have a deep reverence for the Quran and our teachings and traditions, but when we say something like, we know, or do we really know? I like to keep a really open-mindedness with discernment for all kinds of different perspectives. A lot of top kind of scholars, even today, like Yasser Qadi, they speak of the Dabat al-Ard, the beast of the earth, as if it'll actually be a mythical kind of creature. If you look in that verse, what it's describing, it's just kind of interesting if we look at these things kind of symbolically. And to that end, I agree with the spirit of what you guys are saying. Caution must be exercised, right? At the same time, we know, again, names of all things, humans, telepathic abilities exist. Look at Ghazali's work on the miracles of the heart, right? The heart is a profound technology, and there are latent human abilities that, we might have forgotten, that we could possibly remember. And so to that end, I'm not disagreeing with what you guys are saying, but at the same time, it is interesting to consider, that we don't kneecap ourselves out of fear of knowledge that is our kind of right to know, even though it should be in alignment. And to that end, I just want to throw these kind of 3 verses, and I'm glad that we're pivoting to the actual kind of meat of the conversation here. In Surah Al-Jinn, it says 72:8, earlier we tried to reach heaven for news, only to find it filled with stern guards and shooting stars. We used to take up positions there for eavesdropping, but whoever dares eavesdrop now will find a flare lying in wait for them. Now, I share this in English for, respect to the audience, but obviously the Arabic has a kind of granularity that can be lost. But eavesdropping, this idea of eavesdropping is very interesting of hearing, right? Because elsewhere, wink, wink, in Surah Rahman, it says that God taught Adam the speech, right? The speech. And there's a tremendous power in speech. And I do believe that that's the case, because I'll put this post in the nest. It's very fascinating that in the Hermetica, it is said that Egyptian mysteries will not translate into Greek because Egyptian words have sounds which correspond to the energetic essence of things referred to. That the words are magical and transform reality as sounds full of action. Now, people who take the Quran seriously or other scripture, you can instantly see how that might bear relevance to not just our recitation, but dhikr itself, and just, but this applies to all kinds of scripture too. I think that resonance, that speech is powerful. So this idea of eavesdropping, I think, becomes really fascinating in that context. How far do our words really go? And one final point I want to make on that, one of my favorite chapters is 13, the thunder, And in 13:13, one of my favorite verses in the entire Quran, it says, the thunder glorifies his praises, as do the angels in awe of him. He sends thunderbolts, striking with them whoever he wills. Yet they dispute about Allah, and He is tremendous in might. This idea of sending thunderbolts, earlier in that chapter, it's speaking of how God shows us lightning, inspiring both hope and fear. And you think about how hope and fear spark through our minds and imaginations, kind of like lightning, right? But this idea of angels in awe of, the glorification of God, I'll land it here, but I think that's a really critical idea, that going back to that Surah Baqarah piece, right? That only when Adam was able to demonstrate the names of all things did the angels come into submission. And if we take that in a broader kind of archetypal kind of reading, is it possible that latent within us as the progeny of Adam, through understanding and through resonance, it's not that we make the angels submit, it happens by Allah's decree, obviously, but that through this kind of alignment and resonance, that not just the angels, but the jinn and other forces of the natural world can come into alignment as well with our will.
Yeah, these are some interesting ideas, man. So, it's picking up on the point you made about speech, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned that speech is like sihr, it's like a type of magic in a sense. It's very powerful. Allah describes a good word like a good tree that has, is strong trunk and huge branches that reach up into the heavens. And then alternatively, the bad word is the opposite. So speech itself is very powerful. And hence, as human beings, it's a responsibility upon us to use speech in a wise way, cautiously, so that we don't mislead people or misdirect people, or which can ultimately, and if you really think about it, speech is ultimately behind everything that ultimately manifests in this world. It starts off with an idea in a mind, and then that's manifested through speech in many cases, and is brought into the world through speech. So speech is very powerful. But I think at the same time, there is a sense of, we need to also, realize that there are certain truths which are ingrained within Islam and the Islamic tradition, which can be spoken in definitive terms, but also at the same time with a level of humility too, because ultimately we're engaging with revelation, the speech of Allah, and as human beings, we are trying to understand it to the best of our ability. And especially when it comes to this topic, hence we tread very carefully, generally speaking, as well. We have this principle within the group that whenever we're talking about certain ideas which aren't found within the tradition and have really strong evidences, we clearly outline, okay, we're going into the realm of speculation now. So this is speculative. This may be the case. We try not to speak in definitive terms, even with the topic of the jinn and making the link between the jinn and the whole UFOs. Like we've always said in any of our videos, our publications, our articles, our booklet, we are basically presenting an abductive argument, inference to the best explanation, to explain what we believe is the most likely case. And then at the end of the day, God knows best, and there's still a possibility it may be extraterrestrial. However, looking at the evidence at hand, it seems like in this case that the best explanation is the jinn. So we are very careful with our words as well, recognizing obviously the points you picked up on, the power of speech and how it can misguide as well, and how that's a huge responsibility upon the shoulders of the person making the claims. So yeah, thank you for those points, man. I have noticed that Anjali has joined us as well. We've got Alien Light waiting with his hand up. So I don't know, Fark, what do you want to do, man? Anjali, we're good to get you on. Get your thoughts as well.
Well, let's get Alien on because he's been waiting for a while. So let's get him on, and then maybe whoever wants. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Alien Light, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you guys talking about UFOs, and anyone have any kind of background in quantum physics? Well, quantum physics, quantum mechanics is now posting the the evidence of reality right now, currently, right now, at this second in your life? Do you want reality of what quantum physics, or anyone familiar with quantum physics, the electric magnetic light field? Is anyone familiar with this right now?
Yeah, Alien Light, you did share this with us, I believe, about 2-3 weeks ago as well, about the light spectrum and the different colors that emerge from pure white light.
Can I ask you something? The person that's speaking, do you believe your body right now is an luminescent dimensional being? Are you a photon?
Yeah,
do you have photons going through you?
I have loads of things going through me right now, but I'll get to your question there. But the thing is, I'm trying to finish the point. You did mention these things to us before. So is there any specific thing you want to highlight again? Because I don't want it to be the same thing again. So if there is something new that you've come across.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I'm boring you, right?
No, not at all. No, I just want
Is
it to
that
be
what you're
beneficial
saying?
for everyone.
That you don't want reality? Do you know what the colors are that quantum physics is talking about right now? You don't believe that you have electrical magnetic current going through you right now. Let me ask you. May I ask you something, please? I'll leave. Right? Because what we're talking about is intelligence, right? If there is a UFO existence, it's love, it's intelligence. It's a signal of a cohesive intelligence, which quantum physics says the fundamentals of your consciousness are cohesiveness. If you don't understand the fundamentals of cohesiveness, then you don't understand what your heart has been beating since you were born. And you're not doing it, right? You have not a clue of how this is functioning. But quantum physics right now, I'm trying to tell you something, but I'm boring you.
I never said
so if you understand the living, loving colors, potential hydrogen. There are 6 colors in the potential hydrogen existence right now, piercing through you right now. I'm posting it right now. I'm showing videos. Anyone can capture the videos of these colors. If you want to stop being bored and stop being of no conscious reality, because this is your problem, social media. You don't want reality right now. You want stories. You want conspiracies of people that are doing bad things. There's no such existence.
Let me ask you a question.
The universe is love. The universe is kindness. The universe is intelligent. It's happening now. You don't want to know about that, right? You don't really want to know the reality. You're addicted to being in the past. This is your addiction. Social media, humans are addicted. You are so addicted to being in the past that when someone tries to tell you something that's happening right now, you can't relate to it. You're going to lose. You're lost. You're lost, man. How much?
Okay, go ahead. Imran, you had something to say. Can you?
No, I just wanted to ask him a question. About quantum mechanics and stuff, but obviously he's quite charged up right now for some reason. It's not that I was bored, it's just that, we had this discussion last time as well, and we didn't really get anywhere, and I didn't want it to be a repeat so people on the stream don't get bored of hearing the same stuff. Not bored, or bored's been put into my mind now, maybe not telepathically, but just been mentioned so many times, but just so we can make it beneficial for people. So if we can ask questions to Alien Light, that would be quite helpful.
I completely understand. And I think it's the light topic itself is so complicated that most of us probably won't even understand. So it's just that Imran probably you're probably
the thing is, look, when it comes to, I get it, we have perspectives and ideas, and Alien Light has very strong views in regards to light and the light spectrum and quantum mechanics. But again, the point we were talking about earlier about talking in definitive terms, and I think it applies here as well. Let's be honest. Even scientists that are studying quantum mechanics don't really fully understand what's going on in the quantum realm, right? And this is a fact. You can speak to any scientist that studies the quantum realm. So to speak of things within that realm in such definitive terms is a problem in and of itself. So it'd be better to maybe just have more of a discussion than, getting charged and throwing out ideas and accusing me of being bored and not wanting to listen. And I'm the social media problem. We want to understand you, but you have to give us a bit of space to ask the questions as well.
Anyone else who probably want to chime in and just continue on with the discussion?
Not for the colors spectrum. I just wanted to comment back on what Imran was talking about. about what we say about the phenomena, and we all know that when you speak something.
Can I ask you just one intelligent question and I'll leave? Just one, please. Because you're taking your whole life for granted. You don't know anything about life and the colors. Do you know what the color green is? Where does the color... Just ask yourself just one intelligent question.
Can you guys hear me?
Where does the color green come from? Where does it come from? Where does the color green come from?
Alien Light, you need to first stop seeing red, relax a bit, and then we can start engaging with you in some positive, productive way.
Your conversation is in the past. You're really not talking to anything that I can relate to, and that's why I'm upset, because all social media is the same way, right?
Well, is it?
You don't speak of any reality right now.
Is it possible that
your story. Can you tell me one thing right now? The color green, right now. What does it do?
Alien Light, you obviously...
Can you answer that?
Okay, here's the thing with science, right? Science is going to keep on changing. It's going to keep on changing.
Changing? I'm asking one question. The color green right now. What are you talking about change?
Aggressive right now, Alien Light. You're
The color green. What does it mean to you?
Okay,
Where does the color green come?
I'm gonna be honest. If you're not gonna calm down, I'm gonna get some Afak to take you off.
Block me. Why don't you block me? Why don't you block me? Why don't you block me? You want to block me?
I don't want to block you, my friend. I want to have a productive discussion with you. But you're very charged up and angry.
I'm asking one intelligent question. You can't answer it.
Can you relax first? Calm down, and then we can try engage with your question.
I'm listening, please. Thank you.
Okay, so what is your question just about green?
I'll repeat it again. Where does it come from? Is it constant? Is it a cosmological constant signal that is engraving, that is encrypting a laser color green to Earth that you feed from? And is it a source of oxygen?
Okay.
Is it a laser color? Or is there 6 colors that are laser colors that exist night and day? That if they didn't exist, your life wouldn't... Can I ask you something? Light, right? If in the absence of light, would you know what you look like right now? Would you have ever seen yourself and acknowledged that this is you if light the colors that I'm speaking of did not exist?
No,
because you would not exist. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't even know what you look like. You wouldn't know anything. You would be in the dark, right?
Yeah, of course.
With the absence of light, you would never even know what you look like.
Okay.
So how could you even know the color green?
Okay, and your point is, my friend, we're not denying that the light spectrum or light exists. No one is denying that.
And so you don't understand the dimensions of what Alien Light is trying to just say, that you are in it right now. You're swimming in this spectrum right now like fish. I'm the scientist that is posing this. I hope you understand this. I am certified as one of the only people that is trying to tell people, if you don't believe it, so why don't you tap your eyes and look at the colors? When you see a rainbow, why don't you grab a water hose? Please listen to this. I'll tell you what you can do. You take a water hose, right? And you create a rainbow right in front of you. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the living, loving colors that I'm speaking of are right in front of you. They're right there inside of you. You can't see it. So what scientists, quantum physics now are saying, that I'm saying is, like fish can't see the water they swim in, humans can't see the light spectrum that you exist in night and day. These particles of light and color, if you're a luminous dimensional light being, and if you don't believe that, boy, you're really out of touch.
Well, Alien Light,
if you don't believe that you're an luminous light,
anything you said, why are you assuming I don't believe any of these things?
I will speak to your audience because social media is not ready for reality. You're not ready for this kind of reality. The reality is cohesive, intelligent, loves you.
Thank you for coming. I wish you all the best, my friend. I think we can mute Alien Light and we can move on with the conversation because he's not willing to listen. He's assuming things about our position or what we say or what we believe in. You can't have a productive discussion with someone that already knows what you know and what you believe. It's pointless, honestly.
Yeah, and I think we were respectful enough. Go ahead, Angela.
Hi, I was just going to say that he actually sounds like he's having a mental crisis of some sort at the moment. Like, I'm not a doctor. I would suggest a few things, but yeah, I'm glad that
he was actually
that you guys
he was actually on last week and even the week before, I guess, right? We had a whole discussion. It's just that it's slightly more complicated to follow up with what he's saying and what he's trying to preach with his understanding of light. And because it's more like quantum realm and stuff, and even he's, I think, fully not sure what he believes in. So yeah,
failure to communicate for sure. And hey, and thank you for inviting me today.
yeah, of course, for sure. Sam, I think you were saying something before you got cut off by alien light.
I was just commenting about what Imran says about when you speak about something, it's in some way comes to existence, and like for example, if you talk about UFOs or you talk about aliens or jinn, you might have some weird experiences. I just wanted to add to that from our belief, how God creates anything, it just by word. He say kun be, and it's comes to existence. So even the creation, how God creates everything, it's also by speech, by saying be, and it is. So it's not only in our level, it's even, this is how real our reality was created by God, by the power of God's speech, which is completely different than ours. But this is, it's like we have very like 0.1 from what God can have, which is you cannot even compare or count.
And guys, you guys have the patience of saints. And I just have one question: is the living light in the room with us right now? And welcome Anjali and Assad. Assad means lion, and there's a saying I also love, that you can't Assad the Assad. And Anjali, look, the letters, right? We talk about letters and everything. The word jinn is interesting. In Arabic, words come from these trilateral roots, right? And there's a science behind the letters. The word jinn, jim nun nun, it's very interesting, this little idea that trilateral root often occurs with things that are hidden, like jinn, hidden, jannah, paradise, hidden, jahannam, hell, hidden, janeen means fetus, which is hidden within the womb, right? So this interesting correspondence, and in your name you'll notice Anjali, you got the N and the J. Megan will also attest to how powerful the N is in the name. The noon is very, in the Quran there's a chapter that says noon by the pen and what they write in Surah Qalam. So the writing is a very powerful thing. And so I know you have some pretty tremendous experiences, Anjali, and just throwing that out there, that you do have that N and the J in your name, which is very fascinating. Yeah, but what do I know? I don't even know what the color green is. So.
Can I say something to what Brother Sam added? And just to add to it. And he said like that God created by saying kun fayakun. So if you say the word kun, it's like kun. So the theory is that the echo of the noon, right? Kun, that still exists today. And you see that, what's it called? The microwave radiation that we get when you used to switch on the telly back in the day. Which is cosmic microwave radiation that we see here. That's the echo of the God saying kun. Like, that's just something I read somewhere. Anyways, my question is, like, with respect to Jinn and the technology side, from like when we were very young, at least I was, we had been hearing like jinns are stupid. Like, literally, they have like the mental ability of a 2-year-old if they're a 100-year-old. So my question is, like, if that's the case, then how come they have like technology on their side of things, which we can't have? Not right now. Like, it doesn't make sense, And when I look at like aliens, we have like different kind of aliens now that come in, like the reptilian stuff, the Nordic, and like the Greys. Anybody has any idea like what like how this like kind of aligns with what we know? Thank you.
Humans can be so smart, however, very stupid too.
Yeah, and I think that the issue is, so I think this perception that there is amongst many Muslims that the jinn are like children and very, non-intelligent, stupid, etc. I don't think it's true, bro. I mean, the Quran itself is testament to this. Look, and here's my strongest evidence that the jinn are highly intelligent creatures. The Quran was revealed for human beings and jinn. Right? So the understanding there is that they have the ability to engage with revelation. That is not a stupid creature or an entity. Secondly, if you look at when they heard the Quran, so there's a point where they engaged with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and they heard the Quran. And you can see in Surah Jinn, in the chapter of the Jinn, they respond in a very intelligent way. They understand the message, they adopt the message, they take the message back to their people, etc. In the Quran, God refers to them as builders and divers. I mean, think about the title of being a builder. If they're being referred to as builders, that's a skill, right? That requires intelligence. So there's a lot there. I think this notion is misinformed or over-exaggerated within our tradition sometimes.
Imran, could you please mute your mic, please, brother? Imran, that's a really, really good point. And just one quick note I want to add to that. In the Bible, in the Psalms, right? One of my favorite books from the Bible, Psalm 19, and you know how important the number 19 is. There's 19:7 says that the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making the simple wise. This idea of making the simple wise, right? When we think of stupid is as stupid does, right? It's not about your intellectual knowledge. The point of knowledge is action, right? And so if you have a tremendous amount of ability and knowledge, but you apply it in all the wrong places, in the end, who's really the intelligent one? It's if the outcomes don't serve your actual interests, right? So maybe, when we think about this idea of jinn being, quote, stupid, we think about fire and in an alchemical sense, the temperamentality of fire, this very emotionally and energetically volatile substance. Whereas when we think of earth and clay, you think of stability and kind of structure, right? So that's the idea of making that the law of the Lord, the testimony of the Lord through scripture makes the simple wise. I think it's a very beautiful thing because in the end, as a society, we place so much emphasis on intelligence, right? But is it really intelligence that defines the merit of people or civilizations? Or is intelligence itself meant to be deployed in alignment?
I think just to add into that, when we're talking about the jinn, I think this aspect, I agree that, that they're less intelligent is wrong. Clearly they are. I think this is more talking about an emotional intelligence here. So from people I know that deal with like ruqya, that come into contact with what we would call malevolent jinn, the jinn are they go to extremes in their emotions. So when they love obsessively. When they hate obsessively. And this is something that, we see in the character of Iblis. Most rational beings, and we say humans including within that, they may have an initial anger, but then they may calm down, realize, hang on, maybe I've said or done something wrong here. But Iblis didn't have that capacity. Immediately there was this obsessive hate of Adam, this obsessive hate of humanity to such a degree that he swore that he would, until the day of judgment, that he would do everything he could to mislead humanity, and essentially to prove God wrong and say, well, look, here's this creation. So like I say, they are very highly intellectual. It's more to do with their emotional states, and we shouldn't get too confused. Having an extreme emotional state doesn't make you less intelligent.
I think we have Angeli with her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak and for letting me know that you were having this space today. I would have missed it, and I'm glad I'm not. So I wanted to comment a little bit about what Alien Light was saying, even though he was having a difficult time communicating with us and getting his thoughts together in an understandable way. I think I understood. I think I understand what he was trying to say, and so I want to kind of go back to something someone else mentioned earlier as well, when they said that we were talking about God creating and Him speaking and naming things. So frequency was the very first thing that God did. Once in the tradition of a God coming into conscious awareness of himself or of their self, then the very first thing they did was speak, and out of speech became matter. And really what we have there is I think it's showing us that God emitted a frequency, and that frequency organizes things into a physical matter, into being. And so green is the frequency. Frequency is sound. So sound comes before the emission of the light. And so there's a path beginning that I think is telling us how the physical world emerges. Does that make sense? So we have an emission of sound from God, which is a particular frequency, and with that frequency comes light, and that light carries a visual frequency, and those visual frequencies are they are the colors, some of which we humans can see. We've developed technology that let us detect the other light that our eyes are not able to see. So we know that there is more to God's creation than we're able to see. And so green it's just a frequency of the speech of God. Does that make sense? Anybody?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we fully disagree with something like that, but I also want to hear like Abu Salah or Imran, like from their perspective as well. But yeah. What about Sam or one of you guys?
Well, I wanted to mention that, so if you ever mention light, you have to remember the verse in the Quran that says that God is the light of the heavens and the earth, like the universe. The example of his light is like a niche, which is within there is a lamp. The lamp is like within a glass that's like a pearly white star emitting light lit from an oil of a blessed olive tree, neither from the east, neither from the west, whose oil was almost glow without even fire. Light upon light, God guides to his light whoever he wills. So there is a big emphasis on light. I think there was a philosophical man called Sorardi who was talking about the theory of the creation of the universe through light by God. I read when you mentioned that the words can become matter in an apocryphal book called The Ascension of Isaiah, one of the biblical prophets. He could see in one of the heavens, he could ascend into one of the heavens, and he could see that the angels, when they praise God, he could see the praises, and he was surprised that he could see words when spoken, and he could see, he says, like, sounds had colors and had, like, you could see the sound, not only hear it. And when there is something can be seen, you can also hear it instead, like as if there is more to what we have here above.
Yes.
And if I could add to that, yeah, Alien Light was making some really good points. And Angela, I think you're right about, when we carry a chip on our shoulders, right, we come across kind of combative when it's not necessary. And the living light thing is very important, like biophotons, some cutting edge research happening right now that, I've also been immersed in about biophotons and light within us and the nature of light. But as Imran said so astutely, I think it was Heisenberg himself or someone like that said that if we know anything about quantum mechanics, that no one knows anything about quantum mechanics. It's still the case like 50, 60 years later. So a lot to be learned about that. But at any rate, it's interesting that when we think of the word angel, right, symbolically and artistically, we associate it with these winged kind of creatures, yeah? But malaika in Arabic and malak in Hebrew, it means messenger, right? Messenger. And we think about this idea of messaging, right? Messaging can happen in many different kind of dimensions and ways and shapes and forms. It's not just a peer-to-peer, I send you a message, but signals, right? Resonance. We send out signals all kinds of different ways. And then we think about coherence and resonance and how is it possible? One thing that's really also very interesting is like water. Water, in the Quran, it says that all living creatures are made from the water. And, water here too could have a basic reality and a kind of alchemical reality, but water memory is very fascinating. This is why, we as Muslims say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most merciful and most compassionate, when we drink or eat. But I recommend to everyone, when you drink water, whatever your views might be, express a little gratitude, it's interesting, right? That we take water for granted, but when there is no water around, you're going to realize really quickly how important that water is for us. And so that gratitude, is it possible that the very resonance of gratitude and expression has a actual reality on the substance itself? And I say this because when we think of light and angels and all this kind of stuff, is it possible to some degree that our consciousness and the manner in which we resonate with the things we interact with leave impressions upon those things themselves?
Yes.
So in Islam, last point, in Islam we have this thing called dhikr, which is remembrance. Where I have a tasbih, little set of beads around my wrist right now, where we'll reflect on one of the divine names, and then we'll, and then in the Catholic tradition they have the Hail Marys, right, with the Rosary. It's a very similar practice. It's very powerful, that kind of remembrance and just conscious, coherent kind of, invocation. It's a very, very powerful thing. So yeah, those are great points.
And that also, may I say something? I'm sorry. Did you need to say something?
No, go ahead. After you're done.
Okay. Well, what you were just saying, Akasha, made me think about what I've been grappling with in a really good way, with the Jinn being builders and divers, and something that happened while I was listening to the second surah and playing it in my home and meditating and reaching out, to the members, the beings of the council, as I had said that I would do. And they started talking to me about how Muhammad and Jesus, peace be upon them both, that they were prophets who knew and kept the secrets of escaping this wheel of creation and recreation, birth and rebirth that we're currently in, and that's what keeps us bound without memory. And that made me think of I want to say the gate of Banias. Am I saying that right? Where there are 7 gates that lead into the earth, and that one of them is at the base of Mount Hermon, and that they lead into like a deeper cave system that leads to the inner waters, like the primordial or primeval waters of the earth. And so here we have these beings who say that they're guardians, and they guard these gates that lead into an area that you have to be a diver to bring the human soul through to the primordial waters where it can reemerge again, either back into the wheel of life, or it escapes that wheel and transcends it and is able to reach a higher level of being. And that was reminding me of the builders and the divers, being the jinn. And all of that is wrapped up into this message that I got right away when I first met the council, when they were saying to me, remember who you are, remember why you are here, and to prepare to transcend. And one of the tropes, I want to say, that they constantly return to with messages to me that I've shared them as if they were for all of us, and I think that they are for all of us. But they say that we are to detach from, to prepare ourselves for what is coming next, because it requires that we attach from our worldly identity and our material desires, because that if we, it's almost like if we transcend, or if we descend through that gate at the base of Mount Hermon into that underworld, it back into the primordial waters, that if we have already shed our worldly identity and shed our attachment to materiality, that we can then remember who we actually are and why we have gone through this process, so that we can transcend and not be trapped in that cycle of forgetting. I probably left out a lot, and so I probably seemed like I made some huge leaps, but it all happened so quickly, in
Anjali,
just snapping successions.
I love that. I love that reflection, and dude, you're brilliant. That's this idea of the divers and builders is profound. I'm so glad that you were able to intuitively kind of tap into that. If you look at this thing I put up in the nest from chapter 55, the most merciful, one of my favorite surahs of all, it's a very important verse right here. It says, he merges the two seas, yet between them is a barrier they never cross. You can look at this in many different ways, not just physically, as that video shows, right? When you think about two seas that they merge but they never cross, think about even in a conversation. You could be married to someone for years and years and years. It could be the love of your life. You think you know someone else. When two souls touch each other, they merge to a degree, but they never cross, do they? And then also when we think about, this realm and another realm, in Islam, there's this concept of the barzakh, or the barrier, right? And so it's a profound kind of metaphor. And yeah, the primordial waters, water, another post I put in the nest, exploring the elements and their alchemical realities. Water corresponds with depth, right? In the Bible, it says something very beautiful. It says, or Christ says in the Bible, that none shall enter the kingdom of heaven until they're reborn in water, in spirit in the water, right? Is it referring just to the physical baptism process of dipping a baby in water? Or is it possible, to the point that Abu Saladin brought up so brilliantly, right, about emotional intelligence, right? That a part of the human experience and this physicality, it's a beautiful thing to think about. That jinn, I do believe that God knows best, but I think they have larger lifespans than us, not being so physically kind of limited the way we are. They have a lot more kind of leeway and bandwidth. Physical creatures suffer, I think Soren Kierkegaard says something very important about this. He says that observe a woman at the time of giving birth and a man bleeding out in the battlefield, and tell me if this world was something that was created for pleasure, right? The physicality of our existence gives a lot of challenges, but do you see how that's also a crucible for emotional refinement? So I just wanted to just give you some credit.
And spiritual.
Yeah, the two waters meeting but never crossing. It's a deep metaphor, so great job.
I do want to give Imran a chance, and then I think Abu Salah was also trying to speak, but let's go Imran and then Abu Salah after.
No, yeah, I don't. Does Abu Salam want to go first? Sorry, I can wait. It's no problem.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Imran. Hi, Anjali. We spoke last week. Do you remember I asked you if you would be willing to actually play the Quran to the entities? I'm wondering, how did they react when you played it to them? I'm like, when I mean, like, did they manifest for you and did you play it to them?
Yes, I did. And they did not manifest for me in a physical form in my studio. They, while I was playing it, I didn't, see them standing before my eyes like a physical object, but it was more like a holographic presentation. And what they were suggesting to me was pretty much what I was just explaining about the prophets who kept the secrets and taught their disciples the secrets of escaping or overcoming would be a better word. Overcoming
Well, were they able to?
forgetfulness.
Okay, were they actually able to hear the Quran? I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So they were able to hear it.
Yes.
Okay.
There was no shying away.
Okay, so they seem to have a respect for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Do they agree with the mission of the Prophet Muhammad as the final messenger to mankind?
I didn't ask them about if they believed that he was the final messenger to mankind. What they have said, both about the Judeo-Christian tradition and all of the Abrahamic traditions, is that the injection of violence that is in any of the holy books that are written are a result of us being presented with technology that we were not emotionally or spiritually prepared to understand how to use properly, to use for the benefit of life here in our world, but rather we turned it against one another. And so that was not of God. It was a distortion that came out of us. It's our distortion. So anytime that we read violence in any of the holy books, it's because we were given divine wisdom when we were not spiritually or emotionally equipped to know how to use that.
Okay, but as Muslims, we believe that the Quran is the very word of God. And there are places in the Quran where God, in his infinite wisdom, he has given people the right to defend themselves when they are being oppressed for their right to practice their faith and so forth. Does that mean that entities believe that God is wrong? Because this is not an interlocution or interloping of humanity. This is something directly from God that he has allowed, we would say, in a very crude manner, a degree of violence if it is in defense of one's faith. So are they saying that is wrong?
No. In fact, and I've spoken on this before, but I haven't in rooms with all of you gentlemen, but others who I see a lot of familiar names down there, they've heard me talk about this before, that essentially that as fractals of light that animates these bodies that were given to us from the first light, which would be what we're talking about God being, that essentially everything that we are going through is a part of God essentially learning more and more about himself even that he has an ability to experience through us, and that that even violence has a place, that we are not people to judge what that place is for violence and what it means. Like we may see a child who dies terribly, and of course we're going to do everything that we can to prevent that from ever happening again, right? But in what the council says is that in God's eyes, that is serving a purpose that is not for us to know.
Okay, you said something very interesting there, that you said that God essentially is learning about himself as well. How can an entity proclaim to be the creator of all and the knower of all, but yet it doesn't know about itself? Isn't that kind of an oxymoron?
Well, see, this is where I'm not sure if I interpret some of the things that they say to me properly, but what I have understood from this council is that they say that we are all fractals of God, that we are all divine beings. Okay, not that we are gods. I'm not saying that, but that we are a piece of God, and that separating the wheat from the chaff within ourselves separates that wheat and chaff in all of the heavens. It is like it keeps. It allows for even growth of the divine, that there's not like a level that God reaches that is the ultimate level. Like God can reach higher levels than he has already, because he is still able to learn and to see how we evolve and learn about himself. Like he made free will beings, and it wasn't just us. The angels had free will as well. That's why they could choose to make decisions that were against God. You know, it's like a misnomer that, you know, we say, oh, you know, angels didn't have free will. Well, they were one of the first creations of God, and they most definitely did have free will. And so he already in the very beginning, he sees that he created something that had the right to be disobedient. And so he has to learn for himself, well, why did I create a being that can be disobedient? And then so he goes and he creates humans, and he gives us free will and suggests that we will, you know, be in loving, a loving state with him, in a harmonious state with the creation. Yet he has also given us free will, and we can be disobedient. And so the disobedience is part of that process of coming back to God and shedding that part and recognizing, oh, that was disobedient and that didn't serve me. There was nothing good, nothing that serves all of us, all of divinity and all of humanity and all of the animals and everything that God has created in that disobedience. And so we reach to a higher level where we no longer need that disobedience.
Okay, some interesting things you said there. One thing I did notice that you said God essentially can continue to grow and to gain knowledge, but yet an entity that brings everything into existence, surely one of the prerequisites would be for it to be the all-knowing. Now, from an Islamic perspective, we know that God made the devil. He knew the choices the devil would make, but he allowed the devil to make the choices because he was given the right to free will. But essentially, and I mean this with all due respect, Angeline, please, I really want you to understand that from me. You said that sometimes maybe the confusion is with you. Perhaps it's the confusion is with the entities that you are engaging with, because it seems to me that they say one thing, and another thing. On the one hand, that perhaps they're here to remind people of an all-knowing, all-loving God, an all-powerful God, but yet they're saying this God still has room to grow, that this God didn't know that his creation would be rebellious at times. And unfortunately, I think this is what we know from an Islamic perspective. This is very much the modus operandi of the devil and his minions. The fact that these entities would not be present before you when you played the Quran shows a lot to me that they have an aversion. And if they do agree with the Prophet Muhammad, would they then agree that they see themselves as Muslim? And if they're Muslim, why are they bringing a rival, essentially, message that goes against the Quran or could potentially interrupt with the delivery of the Quran to humanity? But I'll hand it over to Imran, though.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. So, and I agree with that specific point. You know, Angela, you're a very intelligent person. It's evident through, you know, the discussions and the points you make. And like Abu Saladin said, I don't think that you're misunderstanding them. I think this is what they are giving to you. And the subtle points, so even from a purely, stepping aside from the theology, from a purely logical perspective, when we talk about the divine creator, the perfect being, you know, even intuitively, rationally, most of us will understand when we talk about God, we're talking about the perfect being, the being that whose names and attributes are perfect, without deficiency, without flaw, uncomparable to creation in any way, shape, or form. Such a being, you know, as soon as you say that that being is not perfect, and essentially that's what we're saying indirectly when we say that there's room to grow. That means that this being hasn't achieved perfection, completeness. Then we're essentially saying that God is not God, or God is a being that's, you know, requires development, is not perfect, you know, etc. And these ideas, and this is the thing, I think what Abu Saladin is saying is that the thing with the jinn has always been historically, they are known to say some truths and then mix it in with many lies and many different conflating ideas to subtly and gradually take you off the path. And this is another point I think is important to mention. The discussions we were having before, as interesting as they are, and it's very important to have those because they stimulate the mind and allow us to, you know, think deeply. And it's encouraged in Islam as well to ponder and reflect, to tadabbur, the Arabic, upon the verses of the Quran. That's a good exercise, and we were engaging in that. But at the same time, there's also the reality that these revelations from God are guidance to humanity. And guidance has to be clear. It has to be something that's understood and not something that's symbolic and subjective to the degree where it doesn't remain guidance anymore. It just becomes anything you want it to be. And that may be something that from a sort of postmodern, you know, new age perspective is enticing, it's enjoyable as an activity, but it leaves us in that position where, you know, truth becomes whatever you want truth to be. Right becomes whatever you want right to be, wrong becomes whatever you want wrong to be. So I don't think it's a reflection upon you, Anjali, that, you know, that you haven't understood these entities. I think the case is that these entities are subtly injecting in some really strange ideas as well, along with some of the truth, with the ultimate goal at the moment, at least it seems like, to keep you in the belief that they're good and they want good for you in the short term, sure, but what's the end game? Again, with all due respect, you know, this is not, you know, this is just to just be very cautious and careful. And I know it could be hard, and I appreciate the fact that, you know, you've probably been engaging with these beings for a very long time. So there's a relationship there. You know, there is an awareness there. There is maybe a friendship of some sorts there. But to stand in the possibility, I guess is what I'm saying, to stand in the possibility that maybe these beings aren't good as they have presented themselves to be, but maybe there's another agenda here. And, you know, again, now stepping back in the shoes of, from an Islamic perspective, the jinn and the shayateen are known to work in this way. They subtly, over time, take you down certain paths. So I just wanted to sort of add that. But anyway, back to you, sorry.
Abu, I believe it's back to you.
No. Like I say, I would back up 100% what Imran is saying, and I think, and this is my sincere, and I say this to you because you may not be my sister in faith, but you are my sister in humanity. We are both the children of Adam and Eve. And we should also remember that these entities, and when I say these entities, I'm talking about Lucifer and his ensemble of malevolent, evil jinn, that they want to misguide, they want to mislead, and sometimes they will do it by manipulating an individual's best of intentions to bring peace and harmony to this very, very troubled world. And as I say, Anjali, and I mean this sincerely, you may have brought, developed a relationship with them that seems to be very beneficial for you. But as I say, and I echo what Imran says, that the shayateen, the wrong amongst the jinn, they will mix falsehood and truth. So on the one hand, as you say, you will be listening to the Quran and they will be telling you these faults. But yet, if they really liked it, well then, why not manifest before you and sit with you and listen to the Quran with you? And I know they will never do that because they know what would happen to them. So please do be careful and do not trust them 100%. Much of the confusion, I would not say is yours, Anjali. It is theirs, and it's being done deliberately.
So you might find this very interesting. They're actually, they just kind of said hello, and they're like wanting to respond more to Imran, it seems, but I believe that it's also just in the conversation itself. But there was something, I can't remember what it was. There was something that you said, Imran, and yes, when you did, they all presented and said like they do this thing where their faces appear and they basically say hello, and then I get like with their face and the hello, I get what feels like no other way to say it but a download. It's just suddenly all this information, and I'm trying to kind of play catch up to go back and figure out how to put what I just saw and heard in my mind into actual spoken word. But something that you said elicited this response. Basically, they said hello, and then they said that I seriously doubt that you're going to like what I'm about to say. So I want you to keep in mind that because I deliver the message does not mean that it is my message. And I want to make that distinction very clear. And nor does it mean that when I receive a message and I repeat it, that it is my message, that I believe it, and that it represents me. Okay, so I honestly don't know what's going on. But so they said they wanted me to tell you that God doesn't know from where he came. And his emergence, it's only going to take me a minute probably to get this out. But
take your time, Anjali. Take your time. There's no rush. Okay. But okay, if that mode of communication is open, I would like to, if they'll be willing to sort of listen to a response as well after you've finished delivering their.
I don't think I have a choice anymore.
Sure.
They're on deck. So it is that God is alone. There's nothing in his creation that he is aware of that is equal to him in his power to create and to be, and that he chooses.
Say that first bit again, Anjali. If you can repeat that, because I don't want to misread into it.
That God is alone in that he has no equal. there, he has to create in order to not be alone. Otherwise, it is just him, and he creates to like to not be alone anymore, and that he puts his spark of divinity in all of us so that he can, what I'm getting is like a jumping from person to person, to a tree, to a deer, to a cat. And he can observe what it is like to be all of those things, which is why he made them uniquely, so that he could go through and experience what it is to be the tree, and to be the fly, and to be Imran. And he can do it all simultaneously, and his consciousness jumps so quickly that it's nearly simultaneously, so that we feel that we are separate beings, but that we are all just representation of God experiencing more things and not being alone.
Okay. Angeli, first thing I want you to realize before I respond to them, I want you to realize that there was a response. Essentially, they were triggered because we called them out. And I want you to, because otherwise, I mean, we've had discussions before and they've never sort of popped up, and even the last time as well. So something triggered them to come say hello straight away and appear. And essentially what we were saying prior to that happening was that these are most likely the shayateen, evil jinn, who are subtly misleading you over time. That was the discussion we were having.
Yes,
so
I'm aware.
Something for you to know. Okay. So the second thing is in regards to the point that, so they seem to not like the idea of, so essentially what they've said goes against what Islam teaches us, or what the Quran, what God says about himself. So for example, something that's, so again, there was a nugget of truth there, which was mixed in with some lies, if you can, for lack of a better word. So yes, God is uniquely one in the Islamic tradition. So the words used in Arabic, ahad, for example, is uniquely one without a second. However, here's the difference now. It's not a limitation for God. It's not something that makes God needy. God doesn't need someone else to be there. God doesn't feel lonely or alone. These are qualities of created beings and entities. We have a need for the other. We have a need for companionship. God is not like his creation. And in the Arabic, in the Quran, God says, for example, "Laysa kamithlihi shay." There is no likeness unto God. There is no equal unto God. Right. God is independent. God says he is as-samad in Arabic. I hope they understand. I'm sure they probably understand the Arabic, but I'll give you the translation. As-samad in Arabic means the one that's completely independent, free of need, not relying upon anything or anyone. So this is the key thing. And and here's the logic behind it for them as well, just in case they don't like the theology. God is the creator. He creates. God is unlike his creation. His creation is limited. God is independent, complete, perfect. Therefore, the limitations that we have as human beings, i.e. in this case of needing others, needing companionship, not wanting to be alone, doesn't apply to God in any way, shape, or form, because he's unlike us. So we don't anthropomorphize God in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully I've given you the logical side and also the theological side of this. So, and the other thing that they mentioned, this last point you made, was God needs to experience things, and hence the tree, becoming Imran, becoming this. What they're suggesting is, by saying this, is that God is limited. Again, because what they're saying is God doesn't know what these experiences are, how these things feel. So this is a limitation. This is a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness, what they're suggesting. But this is no longer talking about God, because God is perfect. He has no limitations, no lack of knowledge, no lack of awareness. So it's very simple and clear from the theological and logical perspective. So maybe if you can pass that on, or if they're probably listening.
They have already responded, and you won't like this. They laughed at one point, and said that God doesn't even know how he became.
Okay. So now we can see the agitation is increasing.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Okay.
It is.
And also what they're saying now that, so what was the last thing they said? God doesn't know?
From where he came.
Okay. So to make such a claim, for an entity to make such a claim, is indirectly suggesting that the entity itself is higher than God. This is something for you to understand, Anjali, yeah? Because to make such a claim in such a strong and, confident way, God doesn't even know from where he came, is almost suggesting that they are higher than God. It's like they know that God doesn't know. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, they have said that they know God, and that they know that he does not know.
Do they believe
where
God,
he came?
Do they believe they are higher than God?
They're saying no, that they are like emissaries.
So do they know? Do they know everything?
They were created. They were created just like we were.
Okay, so do they believe they know more than God?
No.
Okay, so how do they know that God doesn't even know where he came from?
They're saying because God told them.
And God told them how?
I don't know. I mean, like, I'm seeing like speech, like them speaking to one another.
Okay, fair enough. So it seems like it's one versus many at the moment. So here's something else I want to put to them. Okay, this idea of God not knowing where he's come from, again, is a limitation. Because if this is a lack of knowledge, God doesn't know something, right? So what we would say, but that's the first point, right? That God is not limited, and we've established this intuitively, rationally, theologically. It doesn't make sense to claim that God is limited in any way, shape, or form, and they are suggesting here that God is limited. That's the first point, right? Which doesn't make any sense. Second thing is that from an Islamic perspective, God is eternal, without beginning and without end. Now again, this idea that God doesn't know where he came from suggests that God came from somewhere. That's another implication here, right? But we say that God has no beginning. This is again anthropomorphizing God. You're saying because
it is.
Created things have beginnings and ends, right? Creation has a beginning and end. And everything within creation has a beginning and end, including these guys. They have a beginning and they have an end. But this doesn't apply to the creator of creation. So what they're saying doesn't make sense on any front.
Got it. Very interesting.
This was definitely an interesting conversation. I never knew that, these phenomena, these beings will be speaking. So that's really cool.
But I think the key thing is, Anjali, the main thing for us to realize from this is that they are agitated. Right?
Yes, I feel agitation. Like the laughter was almost in
cynical, like almost derogatory or.
Yes, there was definitely a feel of that wasn't all lovely. It was almost like mockingly laughing, like, you don't even know what you're talking about.
So hopefully they're probably struggling right now to come up with a response, because I think what I've said is makes sense on all fronts. And if they do, please do share with us what they say. But I think the key thing, it's not important what they think of or what they're going through. It's about you, Anjali. And I think as long as you can realize that, okay, at least through this experience, they can't be fully trusted. And obviously they may not be as good as they may have presented themselves to be initially.
Well, that is true. I know that they can't be trusted because some things have fallen apart that were very intricate and that they were attesting to, and basically reassuring me. And those things didn't work out. And so I know that they're not always right.
If you don't mind me asking, was it like just now, or are you talking about like previously?
Oh, previously. I mean, we could say just now, because I think that they thought that you were going to be surprised that they were telling you, that God doesn't know from where he came, that he suddenly just realized one day that he was, but that he was like, he came to his own awareness. This is kind of like they're like trying to explain it to me. Like, well, he came to his own awareness, and when he came into awareness, he was alone and there was nothing else. And he doesn't know how he became to be.
Yeah, but can you see all of this type of language they're using? It's almost we're not speaking about God anymore. We're speaking about a limited, afraid, dependent being, it seems like, right? Yeah. Which doesn't make much sense at all, to be honest. Theologically, logically, rationally, philosophically, it doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I hear that.
So it's just, and I guess this is, at least, like I said, it's for you more than anyone else. You know, we know of these beings. We know how they how the modes of function and how they, have been tricking people. Can you ask them? Do they recognize themselves as the jinn? Like when you say, do they recognize themselves as the jinn, or what do they say in regards to that?
They say that they were like essentially the first creation.
Did you mention adversaries?
Did I mention adversaries, or did they?
I heard you mention something like when they were mentioning their relationship to God and their relationship to humanity, and how they came to know through speech that
Sami, before that, they deflected the question, to be honest. They said we were the first creation. Maybe not literally the first creation, but they were created before humans, no doubt. We believe that. But in regards to that specifically, are they the jinn? Do they recognize themselves as the jinn? Or maybe to be more specific, in the Arabic...
They say they've been called many things.
Sure, that makes sense. Yes, absolutely, that makes sense. But would they be known as the jinn amongst the Arabs?
They don't want to answer.
Yeah, not surprised. Not surprised. Okay, that's fair enough. Sami, maybe, can we do one more thing, Anjali, if you don't mind, while they are engaged?
Sure. Yes.
Sami, maybe if you want to recite something, Ayatul Kursi maybe, and just see what the response is.
Yeah, okay. Let's see what they're gonna respond about this, or how they're gonna react, even expression on faces. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو حي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. Can someone say that in English, so also Anjali would be aware, because it has something to do with what they said. It contains some of the responses about this.
Yeah, Afaq, do you want to bring up an English translation, bro? Because I don't want to paraphrase.
Yeah, for sure. Let me look it up. Yeah.
So any initial responses, Anjali, from them?
A couple, actually. And I have absolutely no idea what you just said. But they are saying that they have their own work to do, and it is not always to keep peace, but that they are peaceful, but that they have a job that they do, and that they basically they accept the.
Do they seem a bit frantic, a bit frazzled, a bit sort of?
Something is different, but they're basically saying, "Hey, we're here because we have a job, and we were assigned this job by God Himself, and we have been here much longer than humanity, and we watched over the earth before you humans were here." And that it is by listening to I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like, basically, if you want off of this ride and you want to transcend to a higher state of being, then we have to essentially cast our egos aside, have less attachment to materiality. They're kind of repeating themselves, but not quite.
Can you, like,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and they're talking about egos, but they were the ones acting a bit egotistical earlier by laughing.
Yes,
It doesn't
I
sound
agree with that.
humble. It doesn't sound humble.
Yeah, and plus, Anjali, the other thing is, as we've seen, that they don't really make sense in much of what they say, and it doesn't add up. They don't seem to be sure of what they're saying themselves, and some conflicting ideas and views.
I think it's me that it's having a hard time.
No,
Don't blame yourself.
Angelique, please. What they're trying to do is they're trying to gaslight you. They're trying to make you believe you're the one who's incorrect. You're misunderstanding. They're not. Do not let them gaslight you. They are the ones who are incorrect. They are the ones who are contradicting themselves. The laughter you heard was not an arrogant laughter. It was a nervous laughter that they know that they've been caught out. That's what that laughter is, Angelique. But
there definitely is that sense of being on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is the thing, and this is something for you to think, because I know as you think it, they will pick it up. Tell this to them. They plan and God plans, and God is the best of planners, and they can like it or they can not.
The response is along the line of it. Wow. It's almost like a threat. This is really interesting because this is a side that I have not seen from them previously. Okay, so this is really interesting to me personally. It's almost like
this is what we see all the time with the jinn.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Okay. So this is basically, it was again kind of a laugh and basically saying, we'll see what you think when you have to go through the primordial waters. Almost like they're almost like you're just going to be cast right back into this, basically. Is what it feels like they're saying.
I feel like they're just repeating. They're just repeating because you know why? Because they're limited in their imagination. So it's the primordial waters. It's this. It's that. Their little fairy tale, and that's another little manifestation they used to do. So remind them of that. We also know about that as well. This little fairy tale of theirs is falling apart, and it's falling apart in the face of divine revelation.
Interesting.
I hope I don't come across as very. I hope I don't come across as angry, but
no, not at all.
These things are very deceptive. They, as you said, they're kind of threatening. It's like, well, you're just going to have to go through the primordial waters again. I don't believe in the primordial waters. As the Quran explicitly said, we are born, we live this life, then we go to our grave, and God will resurrect us for the good and the bad that we do. If there is any kind of punishment that comes, it's through our rebelliousness to God, that he will send us to the hellfire, or for the good that we do, he will send us to the everlasting paradise. And that's what they want to think about. That this game, this fantasy that they are trying to perpetuate to you, remind them God is going to call them to account for it. And they cannot escape, and they cannot escape that accounting.
And they're okay. So So they have a response. There was something you said a few minutes ago that they said that it doesn't matter if you believe in the primordial waters, that you don't understand what happens between death and being reborn. And that through that, in that period, is when their job is done.
We'll convey this back to them.
Oh, they're listening at this point. It's full
wonderful.
on.
Well, let me introduce myself. My name is Abdullah, and I'm a follower of the Ummah of Muhammad, who is the final messenger to mankind. Muhammad, peace be upon him, has already explained what happens after death to us. So what you are saying is completely against what he says, and quite frankly, is incorrect. Because Brother Imran, I'm sure, can probably vouch for me and probably speak a little bit better than I can. We can bring the authentication of the Quran, which then authenticates the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So what he spoke, we can verify authentically with the Quran. That means what they are saying, can they authenticate it? Can they verify it with some type of revelation? They can't.
They just say that you will know them when you are reborn.
It's just a statement.
I mean, that's
we
yes.
We already know them. We already know them. Tell them.
Oh, you're telling them at this point.
They can say what they want. We already know them. They are called shayateen, and their innate nature is to lie, to misguide, and to mislead. So we already know them.
Very interesting. This is
definitely
been a while.
interesting. And I do want to say one thing, Anjali. Maybe you should give the Quran recitation a try again. Maybe during one day hour with you, try it out again, listen to it, and see how their reaction is.
Yeah.
To me, the way it seemed when Brother Sam just recited just a few verses, it seemed like, they're all over the place. After.
It was only one verse.
Yeah.
That's all I did. Guys, I wanted to mention something here. I noticed that in Surah Al-Jinn, there is a mention of water as well, that the jinn was speaking, and they said, among us are who submits to the will of Allah, of God, which is Muslims, and among us are the deviants, and as for those who have submitted to God, it's they who have attained right guidance. But as for the unjust, they will be fuel for hell. And if they had kept the true and the right path, we would give them abundant water to drink. So it was weird to remember that there is a mention about water and jinn in Surah al-Jinn itself as well.
Very interesting.
That is interesting.
I do want to mention Imran beforehand. Some of the things, Anjali, like they were telling you about God not knowing. But if you look at even the statements of Moses or Jesus or even Muhammad, like we don't find a statement like that ever mentioned by them where they're saying God is still learning about himself or God doesn't know much, right? So it's like a big contradiction from the get-go.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I was raised in the Abrahamic tradition, so I know contradiction when I hear it.
So actually, just one more thing to sort of maybe suggest to them, ask them. How do they follow a God that they believe is imperfect?
How do they follow a God that doesn't know and has to learn?
How could they trust such a God?
Right. What I'm hearing or what I'm trying to convey from them is that he is, or God is more powerful, the most powerful being that they've ever met and who created them.
That's fine, but that hasn't answered the question that we've asked them, which is how are they?
So it's like he's their father. It's like children that follow their father.
But
Does
they
he have a
believe
name
that,
or something? Like, do they call him something?
I think the father.
yeah, but they haven't answered the question. How can they believe, rely upon, trust, obey, worship a God that they themselves have just mocked?
I don't think that they see it as mocking. I think they see
undermined.
it from their perspective that they're just being honest.
But it's not about honesty. The question isn't about. I'm not
like
talking about the honesty.
Perspective. That their perspective. They're giving the analogy of children and their father. Like you abide by your father, or you are punished, but that doesn't mean that you think your father is perfect. That you can still see his flaws.
Yeah,
that's That's how they're defining. They're apparently, just in the way that they're describing God, is different than.
So could it be that they have misunderstood who God is?
Or it's someone else?
I mean, from my
entity.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So the question to them is there the possibility that they've misunderstood who God is?
It could be. I mean, they've been here for a very long time.
Yeah, the reason is something for them to think about. Like, maybe they've been misinformed about God. Maybe they're not fully to blame. Maybe their chiefs and the ones that are above them, who they report to, have been misinforming them about God.
And also, just to add as well into it, Brother Imran, is that they seemingly keep contradicting. They acknowledge that God is all powerful, but yet then they say God needs to learn, God needs to grow. Well, which one is it? Is God all powerful, or does he still need to grow? And I would even
say... They're saying those aren't contradictions. They're saying that being all powerful doesn't mean that there isn't anything that you can create that you can also learn from. They're basically, that's what they're saying, is that those two things do not contradict themselves.
No. So then, they need to understand that what we're saying is that when we're saying God is perfect, it's in all ways. God is perfect. His names and attributes are perfect. Not just power, but all of God's names and attributes are perfect. His knowledge as well. So they can't say both then. You can't say God is the one to obey and worship and submit to, the perfect being, but at the same time that there's limitations, that he's not perfect, that he's not complete. That's the contradiction that we're highlighting.
I don't even want to tell you, I don't even know if I want to continue having the conversation.
If it's too much, then you can put a plug in it.
I mean, it's just that I want it to be super clear that what I'm communicating, I'm like this. I'm literally like delivering a handwritten message,
Sure. Yeah.
Except I can barely read the writing. Okay. So, but they're saying that perhaps it is the humans who don't know their God.
Yeah, so just tell them, Anjali, that we have good reasons to believe that the Quran is revelation from God. We can establish that with them at maybe another date where we can spend an hour or two talking to them. We can give them evidences, proofs for the Quran being from the divine source. And if we can establish that, then whatever the Quran says must be true. It logically follows because it's from the divine source. And that source tells us that God is perfect, without deficiency, without flaw. And this notion is not only rational, not only confirmed by revelation, but is also intuitive.
It's intuitive to me. I mean, what I consider.
No, I guess I'm talking to them through you, so I'm not saying to you.
Right.
I understand.
I just wanted you to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that for me, you know, what I would consider God to be is perfection. It's
yeah, and I think most people are like that. It's something innate within us to recognize that when we speak about the divine. But they obviously don't seem to recognize that. So just tell them we can establish that this revelation is from God. We know God has sent many messengers throughout history, and He's given revelation throughout history. The Quran, by the way, Anjali, you can tell them the Quran was also sent for them, for mankind and jinn kind, for both humans and jinn.
I don't need to tell them because they're just listening.
Yeah.
Well, then hopefully then there's something else that would be very good for them to hear, is that within Surah Jinn, that is named after them, it carries a conversation that a group of jinn had amongst themselves after they heard the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, reciting other parts of the Quran. And their kin, and I say their kin because this is a conversation that was between groups of the jinn, that they say our ignorant one has said things of God that we never believed that men and jinn would ever say. And the ignorant one, that their kin, their fellow jinn, are calling the ignorant one is Lucifer. So from their own community, it is acknowledged that one of them is misguided, and he's also misguiding others of his fellow jinn. And we would say to them, as Brother Imran has said, we can establish the authenticity of the Quran as the final revelation to God's creation on earth, that is mankind and jinn. And we would invite them to engage with the Quran. We would invite them to listen to the Quran. Because if they truly believe in this God that they say that they have a message from, they will begin to see very quickly that the Quran is the superior and final message. And that if they are bringing anything in conflict with the Quran, they will find they will never be able to do that, because the Quran has a challenge in there that says, bring one verse like it. That challenge has never been met by humans or by jinn.
So you're saying that the jinn themselves can spiritually grow still?
Of course, because they're sentient beings.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me from several things that they have said in the past, which is like at the level that they're at spiritually, there are others above them.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not even like 2 steps below. They're like, you know, it's, I'm making all these hand gestures you can't see, so I feel really silly. But so in that way, I feel like they have acknowledged that they still have spiritual growth of their own to do. And that's really interesting.
Absolutely, because they are not born with this innate spiritual perfection. Only the prophets have that, but they came with a message to humanity to give us the ability to reach that. Also, God knows that we are imperfect, and He knows we will make mistakes. But the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said the best one, you know, that if you make a mistake, you seek God's forgiveness and you carry on back down that road again. And that's why I would say to the jinn who I'm talking to, you have an opportunity to break away from a cycle of abuse. And when I say abuse that you've had from your own kind, that maybe you have been spiritually bullied, maybe you've been physically bullied by other jinn that see themselves superior to you for whatever reason. But as the Quran says, superiority is through submission to Allah and obedience to the Prophet Muhammad. It is not through physical force or anything like that. So I would say to them, be open-minded. There are others of your kin that have accepted Islam, because Allah revealed in the Quran that they accepted Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he met you, your kind, and he gave them dawah. He instructed them in Islam. We even know a group of sincere Muslim jinn rescued a human jinn from captivity of the shayateen jinn. So you have an opportunity, and I say this because I'm a creation of Allah and you're a creation of Allah. You have an opportunity to break a cycle of abuse and lies and misguidance. And you can do it very easily by saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now, the first thing that maybe your fellow jinn have said, Muhammad is a human. Why are you going to follow a human? Because that's what God has commanded. And God knows that which we do not know, and he knows better than what we know. But irrespective if Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a human being, he has come with a divine revelation that it is obligatory upon you to follow. And if you do not, there will be consequences for you.
This is heavy. This is super heavy.
Yeah, Anjali, if it's again too much, we can, maybe start close it off and just shift the topics, talk about something else, bring it to a close. You look at yourself as all, how you're feeling with the whole thing.
We want to make sure that there is nothing wrong against you. We mean you all well, and we love having you around.
Oh, I feel welcome.
Yeah, I can imagine how difficult this probably is, because you're like getting all of this information coming in that we're talking, to you, to them, and then they are putting stuff back in, and obviously you're seeing them in a way that you haven't seen them behave before,
right?
Which is probably quite intense as well.
Yeah, I think that it did shake me. It shook me a little bit, that sarcastic laugh, or that degrading laugh, like, you don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen that kind of attitude from them at all.
It wasn't a sarcastic laugh. That was a nervous laugh.
Mm. Okay.
So anything else they're saying, and then we can maybe cut it off there.
You will be fine, Anjali. I think one of the best recommendations that people would do, and I would suggest, is because a lot of our knowledge regarding this jinn kind and all this conversation stemming is from the Quran itself, and the knowledge within it describes a lot about them being the middle nation between humans and angels in terms of physicality and abilities. I would suggest or recommend reading the Quran. Give it a read as a book, and you will be fine. You will have knowledge,
Thank you.
more knowledge than the knowledge that they give you, because it will give you a knowledge about them and knowledge about God that doesn't have contradictions like what they have given. So it will give you some peace. It will give you knowledge, and really, I've been following you maybe since. You remember the subreddit 4 years ago, so I know
yes.
maybe this is could be on your health and your mentality.
It's been 5 years now, Sam.
Yeah, and I've known you since then, so yeah.
I remember you.
So Anjali, one more thing, once you maybe after this space, there's a possibility that your relationship with these beings may not be the same, and if you feel troubled in any way, reach out to us. There's ways of dealing with that as well, and they don't have power over you. I want you to realize that they can't do anything to you if God protects you. They may try scare you, threaten you, whatever. If that happens, I'm saying not that it would, but you may see a shift in their behavior after this, because there has been a bit of an exposure that's taken place. So just reach out to us. We can. There's ways of dealing with anything else that may follow after this, but you'll be fine. You'll be okay. They can't do anything to you.
Thank you, because I am feeling extremely emotional about this. Yeah.
Do you remember what you said before, Anjali? You said that playing the Quran It gave us a tranquility to your heart.
It did. It was very beautiful.
Play the Quran again after this, maybe, and just take that time, wind down, listen to it. And like I say, one of the things that the Quran does is in the Arabic word it calls sakina, which means like tranquility. It brings tranquility. It brings that peace. It brings that quiet into the outside world that is constantly interfering. So yeah, as Brother Imran said, you may have a change in relationship with these jinn, but please remember, and this is a beautiful thing the Prophet Muhammad used to say. He used to say, Hasbi Allah ni'mal wakil, meaning there is no might and power except from what God has. Whatever abilities they have pales in significance to God, and God can protect, support, and guide you through this.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, may I read or recite something that is protective for everyone around, especially just in case something malevolent was around or picked up conversation? Can I just, it will be very quick. It's just the last 2 pages in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
صدق الله العظيم.
That was really good. I really appreciate it, Sam.
Yeah. So if you guys would like it to be in English as well, just to give you a quick, it's very short. You can. So it's like seeking refuge in the God of the mankind, the Lord of the mankind, from the evil whisperer that whispers in the hearts of the humankind, neither if it's from jinn or from humankind. This is the last page of the Quran as a protective thing, as from the final words that God have revealed to humanity. So the last page was how humans can read to seek refuge in God for protection, because these were supposedly the last book, the last revelation before the end times, like whenever it comes.
Thank you, Sami. That was so. I guess we can maybe bring it to a bit of a lighter note and just start wrapping up. Anything else, Angela, you want to share with us? Yourself this time. I guess anything you'd like to share with us, or anything you'd like to mention before we bring it to a close.
I, in some strange, odd way, I really enjoy these conversations. I feel like I've been trying to figure out who the council is. People ask me, who are the council? And I just say, well, they're the council of these divine beings. I never know. I don't have an answer. And that has troubled me. And I've tried to just overlook that and think, well, when the time is right and I need to know, then that's when I'll know. And so I've been, trying to just be at peace with it. And there's something about the way that Christian doctrine has expressed similar things that I find it much more difficult for me to receive and hear it. And I think it's a language barrier, which is funny because here we are, we're talking about the Quran and but I'm saying, hey, I have a language barrier with dogmatic Christians. And but I feel that there's something in the way that we've all spoken here today that has helped me to hear what you're saying, and somehow you have brought out in them something that I had never seen before. And so for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for joining, Angie. We really appreciate you coming on, and sharing your thoughts. And you know what, you're going to be an example for many people as well, because a lot of people out there have these experiences, whether they're approached by the Nine or they come in any other guise, the lady or whatever else it may be. People are troubled by these things. Sometimes this is a lifelong thing, so they will see you as an inspiration, dealing with this stuff. And so yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasure having you on. And hopefully, it's been an eye opener for all of us, to be honest. And hopefully, people have seen, maybe to some degree, beneath or past that veil or that illusion that they create. And they have been doing the same thing for since a millennia, or from the beginning. The same tactics, the same tricks, just different guises in different times in history. As they said, they've been known by many names, and that's very true. That was one truth that they said tonight. So yeah, hopefully it was beneficial for everyone that joined. We really appreciate you guys coming on. And Angela, like we said, if there's any questions, you have any troubles, just email any of us. IREP directly. You can message me. You can message Abu Salahuddin, Sam. You can message any of us. We'll get back to you straight away. There's nothing to worry about in this case. I guess we'll wrap up, guys. Anything else, Abu Salahuddin, Fark, Sam? Anything you guys want to share before we sort of close it off today?
Yeah, I'd say it's most definitely been a real eye opener. I've learned a lot myself today as well. And one thing I hope everybody takes away from today is, we really today, we saw the power of God. And we saw that through quoting from the Quran, from the recitation of the Quran, and the things that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, that essentially it is clear the way, the misconfusion, the lies, the beguilement that the jinn subject many people to. And, hopefully, hearing that this is a place where you can speak openly and you will be treated with compassion, you will be treated with love, because as Muslims, we see it as our sacred duty to help and support those in need of humanity, regardless if you believe you're Muslim or not. But this is a sacred duty that as Muslims we have been given, and we see it as a continuation of the duty that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came. And like I say, I hope today's meeting, I hope session was really beneficial. And for me, I'm just gonna, go to my bed tonight, and I will really thank God for the graces and the small mercies that he's given me in my life. And I'm really thankful for that.
Thank you, bro. Fuck.
That's it. I was just thinking of wrapping it up. I do just want to thank everyone for coming in. If you guys haven't followed Imran or IREP account,
you have to do it properly, man. You have to say everyone's name. And like in the tradition of Farouk, we can't stop doing that just because Farouk's not joining us.
That's true. Till he comes back, I'll do it. I'll continue it on. We have like 40 plus people, so I'll. All right. Thank you, Imran. Thank you, Abu Salahuddin, Angeli, Sam. I'm the twin Sam. There we got Fringe, UFO Intros, M1K3Y. We got Megan, Sadie, Sarah Beth. We got the UAP Whisperer, Joe, Khalid, Gang.